Yeah. Can accelerate. Yep. Yeah, there's no question about that, and he's putting his life in danger. That's for sure. You know, one turn from one of these cars when he's doing 95 miles an hour on a surface street, if they don't see him, you know, even hitting a big pothole. I don't know if you ride a motorcycle or if you have much, but when you get up to those speeds, boy, I tell you, it gets extremely dangerous. At this street here is a pretty major as we travel northbound on Lark Ellen Avenue. It looks like there's some stoplights up ahead, but nothing in the way of traffic. And boy, look at the acceleration, though. You can tell these motorcycles, these modern-day motorcycles, are so fast. I mean, they go up to 180 miles an hour in some cases, some even faster. But the way they accelerate is incredible. Now he's at a stop light here, and I'm sure he'll look both ways before he goes through. So, you know, sometimes, Philip, we follow people that are being pursued, and we think there might be drugs or alcohol involved. This guy, not that case. He has control of that bike. He's ridden it very well from the moment we got overhead. And he's still looking around. There are no patrol cars behind him. We don't think any authorities are following him at this point on the surface streets, just from the air. Yep. He's got the steering stabilizer turned up, if you know what I'm talking about, because he doesn't want to go at those rates of speeds and hit anything that's going to make that front wheel wobble. But at this point, you know, law enforcement, I think, from following this, are just saying, hey, let's follow him from the helicopter. We can't really control what this guy does on the ground right now, and we really aren't in a position to try and stop this. I don't see that there's much that they could do to try and get in this guy's way. They're not going to be able to throw out a spike strip. That doesn't seem to be an option. CHP has called off their pursuit. It was on the freeways for a while. I believe this is going to be the West Covina area. And it's incredible, though, to watch these things accelerate, isn't it? At one moment, it looks like, bring up a real-time speed tracker. He'll be doing 35 or 40, and within an instant, he'll be up to 90 miles an hour. Yeah. Yeah. Push into the bike. Now, this is a dead end right here, Philip. I want to interrupt you for a moment. Open up out of the shot. Oh, he realized it, and he turned around. That was a dead end on that street. So that's a situation where if patrol cars were behind him, they could have ended it as he went down that little surface street, and it was a cul-de-sac. There was no place else to go. So certainly we talk a little bit about him maybe being in an area that he's familiar with. This probably isn't the case here. Is he waving? I think he might be. You know, it wouldn't be the first motorcycle chase that I've covered where the motorcyclist did it on purpose and was trying to get a little attention, was waving at the police. And that appeared that that's what it was in that situation right there moments ago, that he was just waving at the helicopter overhead because there are no patrol cars behind him. And I can't tell what type of motorcycle that is. It looks like a late model, and you know, the power to weight ratio on these things, some of them up to 200 horsepower, and they only weigh like 400 pounds. It just makes for a rocket out on the roadways. We haven't seen it. There's a patrol car at that intersection. Let's see if he turns. He does. So it looks like now if we open up a little bit, you're going to see the patrol car behind him. And we'll see if he does go back on the motorcycle and push in. So as soon as he saw that motorcycle behind him, he really started the acceleration. This is accurate, 75, 80, 90 miles an hour. For a moment there, it took a second for the speed tracker to catch up. That wasn't 140. And now he's slowing a bit for this intersection. There's a patrol car behind him, and that has changed his demeanor here. He's going to go through this intersection, make a right turn. There's another patrol car. So it looks like we're in a jurisdiction now. And I believe we're still in Whittier, if I'm not mistaken. Excuse me, not Whittier, in the West Covina area. And they do have two patrol cars behind him at the moment. Thank you. That's correct. They tried to pull him over for speeding. We're actually in Baldwin Park, and I believe those are Baldwin Park PD units behind him. But they just cannot pursue this motorcycle on the surface streets. You know, the officers have to stop for the red lights. They can't just bust through. And the motorcyclist was able to maneuver through those lights very quickly. They're still behind him. You don't see him in this shot because they're too far off. We'll stay on the motorcycle at this point. But we're in Baldwin Park. We're headed back southbound towards the 60. And even though they have a couple of units behind him, it's really difficult for them to try and track him on the ground. Yeah. I can't really tell. There's really, the patrol cars behind him a couple hundred yards. They're just having a hard time keeping up. It looks like they'd like to get right on his tail, but at this point, he's just too maneuverable for them. And the acceleration on that bike is such that the patrol cars get caught behind a red light, as they have now. And then he just slows down, almost, Philip, as if he's taunting them. When he sees the patrol cars go through the red light, you don't see this as well as I do, he accelerates. And then when they get stuck behind a red light, well, he slows down, and he waits for them to catch up. So it's almost like a cat and mouse game here. Open up a little bit so you can see the patrol cars behind him now and see how close they've gotten. Now, look at that. That's what, really frightens you, I would think, if you're the motorcyclist. Somebody pulls in front of you, you hit them, and it could be all over very quickly. Crossing right underneath the 60 freeway now, headed southbound. And you can tell he waits for the patrol cars to get on him, and then he just launches and takes off. So it almost appears that this is a bit of a game to this motorcyclist. Yeah. I think we're up to about 100. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, no doubt about that. And if this is one of the wins, bring up the speed, would you? We're right on top. It should be accurate. And he is really moving now, 90 miles an hour. And look at that, in and out of traffic. So exactly right, Philip. I mean, although the public at large is in a bit of danger here, as far as if he crashes into a car or, God forbid, hits a pedestrian, because that could be fatal. If he crashes at these speeds, he's really going to be in trouble. get me the other side, it'd be great. Yep. No, absolutely. And the patrol car swerving in and out, almost like, yeah, I'm not certain when you lost our signal, but um, yeah, they're no longer behind him was the point I was making. And he was swerving in and out, almost like he's just enjoying riding his motorcycle. He certainly seems to have complete control of the bike. And we are still, we're in the Hacienda Heights area now. We're south of the 60 freeway, no longer on the north side. And we did see him go into what it was almost like a business park there, go into the courtyard. And I saw a big parking structure, and I thought possibly, we've seen that before, that he might try and make a move there and make a run for it, knowing that there was no patrol cars behind him. But he does know the helicopter's overhead. And once again, at this point, I think they're just going to be content to follow with the helicopter. You see him in that shot, and just wait until the suspect finally decides to, make a run for it or give himself up. Well, fortunately, the Sheriff's Department has a lot of helicopters. I'm not certain how many, but dozens. And what they'll do is when one helicopter will say, down to WAG 8, in this case down to Long Beach, and just tell them, hey, I got 40 minutes worth of fuel left, and they'll send another helicopter up here to take over. They'll do a swap out. One helicopter will tell the other one, hey, I've got him in sight. The main helicopter overhead will leave, and the secondary ship will come in, and, they could keep doing that all day. So that wouldn't be an issue. It's in the Sheriff's area right now, so they're the ones overhead. If it came into LA's, towards downtown, went west, it's possible that LAPD would take over. It changes from time to time, but air support won't be an issue. Boy, going into a parking lot here. Now this is interesting because we have patrol cars that did catch up with him when he stopped driving so quickly, and now we're in a parking lot with a shopping center, a strip mall, if you will. And you have patrol cars moving into this area. He could be locked in. If he goes behind there, if he makes a right turn, they do have the opportunity to possibly get him cornered in this shopping center. Yeah, now there's one behind. If they get one on the other side, then they may be able to pin him behind this supermarket or this large strip mall. It's unclear if they have the resources to do that. So that's sort of what happens, Philip. It's sort of a trade-off. There's a patrol car. It's a bit of a trade-off. And, boy, look, he sees the officer there. He's not going to stop, and he's just going to take off. That gives you an idea of what I was saying. Yeah, definitely. But it's just so difficult for them to try and stop this with the patrol units. I mean, no matter where he goes, the bike is so maneuverable and so quick that it's nearly impossible to stop this. Yeah. No, they've decided to give up. I mean, I think what they saw was there's no way that 2 or 3 patrol cars are going to stop this guy on the ground. They would need a lot more resources than that because he just toyed with them. I mean, once they came around, he saw him. He just maneuvered through the parking lot. and took off. So I think they realized that there's little to no chance they're going to stop this on the ground. It's a trade-off, right? If you have enough patrol cars behind him, you may be able to take him into custody when he does something like that. But getting them in position is difficult, and it's dangerous because he's traveling at such a high rate of speed. And at this point, I think they're going to be content to just follow this from overhead. You know, as you go into different jurisdictions, you know, you get into Baldwin Park, their police officers may look at this a little different. They want to get them off their surface streets. So it can change just depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. But Sheriff's helicopter is staying overhead, coming up on an intersection here, a red light, but you can see how maneuverable the bike is, how he can go right to the front of the line. He can look to see if he wants to run this red light. It looks clear to him. There's traffic. He sees that he can get by safely. And, you know, how do you follow along in a patrol car in a situation like that? Yeah. Exactly. Nope. Yeah, I think, Philip, this thing is going to continue on until the motorcycle just decides to stop. You know, there's not much that they can do, and he's putting himself at risk, as you mentioned. I mean, I have a bike. I don't ride anymore because it's so dangerous, but I used to all the time. And, boy, my son wanted to ride, and I'm like, no, you can't, because so many things happen out on the freeways when you're a motorcyclist and on the roadways you just have no control over. And even though this guy has real good control of this bike, he's able to maneuver it very well, it's extremely dangerous. Now, here we go. They have changed something here. Up ahead in this intersection, there is a patrol car. I'm not sure which agency it is, but you're going to see the motorcycle come up to this intersection, and you're going to see the patrol car right there. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how they handle this. It looks like an LA County Sheriff patrol car, and they did force him to head that direction, but you know, he doesn't look like he's too worried about it. It almost looks like he's looking back saying, come on, catch me if you can. No, and I wouldn't think so. No, I've never seen that. I mean, more than likely, if you did it, you may injure or maybe even kill trip either, although that wouldn't be a possibility with a bike or anyone. Look at the speeds, Philip. That's an accurate speed, too, up to 117, now slowing down. It'll take a moment to kind of click down the way the sky map works. Sometimes you see that 137. It's not that. It went up to 100, and then it sort of evened out, and then it went back down. It'll give us an accurate speed here in just a moment. It's interesting the way the GPS acquires and does get on to speeds of vehicles. But those are accurate there, we believe, around 70, 80 miles an hour. And the acceleration is still incredible, but you know, what that showed you moments ago was how difficult it is for law enforcement to try and control something like this, to try and keep this or to stop this. And it's nearly impossible. And I really think they're just going to follow this from the air until this individual gives up, makes a run for it, you know, goes to a parking structure, goes into, you know, an area where he can run and get into a house. I've seen that several times. But I don't think they can stop it on the ground. No, you know, he won't lose the helicopter, but boy, look at how close that is and how fast that is and how close it is to the vehicles. One wrong move, I mean, and this guy could be, he could be gone. He could be in an accident and kill himself, and he could, tragically, we hope not, injure someone else. But the speeds here have been excessive, and what was really unusual is how he slowed down to let that patrol car get right on his tail, pointed back at the officer and then just launched in this bike. But the helicopter overhead will not lose him. We don't have weather conditions. You know, sometimes it's really foggy. You might have an issue. We're not in airspace that would restrict us from flying through this. And more than likely, they'll never be able to get at a speed higher than what the helicopter can travel. Even though it might go a little faster than the helicopter can go direct, and most streets don't go just absolutely in one direction. So you can kind of cut them off. We have followed a couple of pursuits where the motorcycle was faster than us. We can go about 130 knots, 140 miles an hour, 142, 145. Somewhere in there would be our max speed. But we've never seen one that really traveled at that rate of speed for such a long time that we couldn't at least keep them in our sights. Well, he was on the freeway when we first picked him up on the 605 North, and he got off on Vincent, I believe, on the 10. We followed him on the freeway for a while. He did cross back over the 10, had an opportunity to get back on the freeway, and then decided not to. We're like right in between the 10 and the 60 right now, and you can see the motorcycle has slowed considerably, looking around, now turning around, going back in the opposite direction. I don't see any patrol cars behind him, and so it's difficult to even what he's thinking. He's taken his shirt off or his jacket or backpack or something and threw it there. Yeah, there's nobody behind him, though. I don't see any patrol cars behind him, so he's acting a little unusual now. I've seen this a little bit, but right now it's just the helicopters overhead radioing his position. They'll sort of see, I mean, they'd like to get this guy into custody. They don't want this type of thing to take place. It's a danger to himself. It's endangering the public. And so, you know, they'd like to make sure they get this guy in custody so it doesn't happen again. You don't need somebody like this getting away and then thinking, well, I'm just going to do this, you know, a couple times during the week. We're into a shopping center here, and there are patrol cars not too far away. They just can't keep up with them. But boy, when the patrol cars did catch him, it was almost like cat and mouse, and almost like he was saying, hey, you can't catch me. But there are no patrol cars coming into this strip mall right now, and at least the motorcycle slowed down, fortunately, because we do see a lot of pedestrians out here in front of this market. Yeah. A cul-de-sac. I don't see a pattern either. He turned down this street. He's obviously not familiar with the streets because that was a dead end that he just turned onto. He turned around. And, you know, that's the dilemma you're up against if you're law enforcement. If you had 5 vehicles behind him, you might be able to put up a barrier here and stop this. On the other hand, you're putting the officers at risk, and at the other hand, every time they got behind him, he was driving more erratically and at higher rates of speed. So I think they're content to just follow from the air. Went into this neighborhood, made a turn down what was a dead end, and then came right back onto the same street that he was on before. So I don't see a pattern. It's almost as if he's turning around looking to see if the patrol cars are behind him so they can play with him a little more. It's unreasonable to assume they could do that because there are patrol cars in the general vicinity, but they're not close enough to get in there that quickly to try and stop him in a situation like that. But, you know, now he's turning around again. He's headed back to the west on Francisquito Avenue. And now he looks like, oh, he's turning into a sidewalk. We haven't seen this before. So, oh boy, I wonder if he knows those people. Yeah, that's unfortunate when we see these things. You know, if they go on long enough with social media the way it is compared to what we dealt with when we followed these, 25 or 30 years ago, now people start to realize it's happening, and sometimes it just emblazons the person being pursued, and they get out and they just try and get more and more attention, and it really just becomes more and more dangerous as time goes on. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, waving again. Yeah. Yeah, Philip, we did get some information that the Sheriff's Department did get the backpack. They went through it, and there was nothing identifiable inside that backpack. So as you mentioned, some of the things he was shedding could lead them to a description of, or at least lead them to the identity of the suspect, but that was not the case with the backpack. So, so far, this guy has not done anything to let authorities know who he may be. Now, this is interesting. Stopping in a gas station, talking to someone. Now, we haven't seen him on. He could actually be talking to people and heading to this location to meet someone, although it's possible. You know, they have those helmets that have, oh, but look, is he going to get into that vehicle? Oh, he's stealing the gas. Look at that. He rode up to that and just got enough so that he could drive on. It didn't look like he took much on, but those motorcycles do not. Boy, look at that. I'm sure that person was frightened, too, as they pulled up. I'm assuming they didn't know that individual. Could have. And he's waving at the sheriff's copter. Yep. But a gallon gives you a long way. Yeah, even a couple gallons. I mean, if that much. But that's going to get them a lot of miles. You get pretty good miles per gallon if you're not heavy on the accelerator. Yeah, I can't tell how big the bike is. I can't tell if it's large CC, 1,000 CC. If it's some of these bikes, even the 750s or the 600s are just so quick these days. But there was a patrol car that he went by on the roadway, and it was fairly close there. So, as I mentioned earlier, jurisdictions, then you start to get, different procedures with those agencies. And sometimes one city that will say, hey, just let him go. Another city may say, hey, let's see if we can't stop this guy. So as we, he travels out through the city in all these different areas, sometimes we'll see a different approach on the ground. The 10. Yeah, the West San Bernardino Freeway, not far from the 605. We're in Baldwin Park, and we did see speeds up to 130 miles an hour earlier on the freeway. We'll see if he starts to travel at that rate of speed. And then also, you know, CHP may engage. If he stays on the 10 westbound for a long stretch of time, they may decide to get involved. But earlier, they had just backed off. They weren't interested in trying to follow the motorcycle at those types of speeds. No doubt about that. He's got control of this bike. He's traveled very recklessly, very close to some vehicles, and he's fortunate that he hasn't been involved in an incident and got himself injured or killed. We're on the 605 northbound. I think you lost my signal around the 10 and the 605. So he got onto the 605 north. So now we're headed up, you know, up towards the Irwindale area, headed through El Monte. But we have seen some pretty high rates of speed on the freeway, you know, but he got some more gas. Maybe he was low on fuel, got himself a gallon or two, and that could keep him out on the roadways for, you know, hours. We did, it was on the 60 west and then got on the 605. It started in the Norwalk area, came up through the Colima Pass, for those folks familiar with that, up into Hacienda Heights, onto the 60 westbound to the 605 north to the West 10, then onto the surface streets for quite some time, then on back to the West 10, and then North 605. And this will end, the 605 North ends up at the 210 in the Irwindale area. And there's not much traffic up here as far as the volume on the freeway is concerned, so he's got a, you know, an open roadway up ahead, if you will, if he just wants to continue on. But no CHP units behind the vehicle, just the sheriff's helicopter you see there overhead.